And that was, a couple of years ago. That was August of 2022. And since then, I still have not turned on a TV once. I don't watch TV. I have committed every moment to learning these strategies to help agents and to help entrepreneurs. And I think that's part of my success, is that I decided I'm going to cut out TV. And from that moment, sitting at Tony Robbins, I cut out TV.
Do you know how much TV the average American watches on a daily basis?
I don't want to know. What is it?
4.5 hours a day.
4.5.
Phil, great to see you. I'm glad you came to Miami. I appreciate you making the trip down to hang out with me. The point of the podcast is I always like to show people the origin story, right? I think most of our agents have seen you on very big stages. You've been to a lot of the rallies I was at. We just had you on the main stage at EXPCon. But I think when someone sees a finished product, it's really hard to know where step 1 to step 2 was.
Yeah.
So if you just want to take us back to the beginning, tell us where you came from and how you became who you are.
Yeah,
go from there.
Man. I love it. Well, thanks for having me here. It's always an honor. I think what people don't see is they don't see all the work and all the things that you do to set yourself up for success. A lot of people see the highlight reel. They see what's on Instagram. They see a happy face. But sometimes when I go through my motivational speeches, I'll say some of the happiest faces hide the hardest battles that we don't know about, because there's always people going through things that we have no clue. And for me, growing up, I went through a lot of different adversity where I had to basically pull myself out and make decisions for myself. And I think that helped me and set me up for success, because I had to learn how to take control of a situation and just take action. And one of the most difficult things, I think, for all of us is we have a hard time taking action when our back is up against the wall because we get afraid. And fear causes inaction. And so for me, learning as a young kid that, hey, I can either sit here and be afraid and it'll cause inaction and nothing's gonna change in my situation, or I can go out on a limb, even if I don't know what the right move is, I'm just gonna take a step. Because for me, taking action, even if it's the wrong action, you're gonna know pretty quick that you took the wrong step and you can course correct. But if I'm afraid and I have no action, I'm sitting there in fear and inaction, I'm never gonna get further. And so, young Phil Stringer had to learn that in various ways. And then even, in the last few years of my life, I've had to pull myself out of difficult, dark personal situations. And I've built this AI company where, we started off with a course for real estate agents. And then it spread to different industries. And now we're dealing with over 20 different industries that we coach and consult for. We have this on-demand course, and it's helped so many agents. We have 1,200 different agents, 50 states, 23 countries. And then I was like, okay, how can I do more? Well, we scaled from that to one-on-one coaching. And because we wanted to deliver a personalized experience. And so I have a team of coaches, we're certified, and they do weekly calls with people. And then I thought, okay, how can I do even more? And that's where consulting comes in, to where we have a consulting team that will go into any enterprise, doesn't matter if it's real estate, doesn't matter what industry. Go into those enterprises, spend a couple weeks with them, figure out what their pain points are, and then we build customized AI software and solutions to solve whatever problems they have, right, for their specific solutions. So it's been this whole evolution of, man, I want to create a course to help a real estate agent, to, we've got several different products and different things where we're scaling what we've currently got. But I would say overarching theme to answer your question is take massive action, because the only thing to get away from fear is action. Action removes fear, and inaction keeps you in that state of fear, and that's been my main thing since I've been a kid.
Well, go back to being a kid. You didn't start in real estate and AI.
No.
how did, I always like the kind of, because interestingly enough, I've been licensed 23 years, and definitely when I was coming into real estate, it was not cool, right? Now we have buddies like Ryan Serhant who've made it cool.
Right.
And so I think there is a whole generation of agents who wanted to be agents. But most everybody, real estate being my first career, was an anomaly 25 years ago. But walk us how you ended up in this industry of ours.
Yeah, so my first real job was for General Electric. And I remember I got invited to the sales team.
And how old were you?
So at that point, I think I was 22, right?
Okay.
Like right out of school, and got invited to the sales team, which I had no idea what that would entail. But I knew that the salespeople made more money than the non-sales people because of commission. And so I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Had no sales training, had no idea.
What's crazy is most people don't appreciate this, but if you look at the highest paid professions on the planet, it's typically athletes and celebrities. Like, because, $50 million for a movie is hard to beat. Then CEOs of publicly traded companies. And then the salespeople at the CEOs.
Right.
And in most of the companies, in companies I've ran, our salespeople make more than the actual CEO.
Wow.
Including ours, actually, by the way.
Well, that was my motivation. I was like, well, yeah, sure, why not? If I get added commission to what I'm already doing, I might as well. And so I just decided, okay, I'm going to learn how to communicate with people. I'm going to learn how to sell a product. And I worked for GE, and within my first year, I'm a young kid at that point, but within my first year, I was #1 on their team worldwide for sales. And I thought, okay, maybe there's something here. I didn't know that I was good at this, but I seem to have this natural gift to build relationships and communicate and to sell different products. And so that was very interesting to me. What pulled me away from sales, I actually went into the music industry and I did music, and because that was my passion. And I had a passion for leading worship at churches, and so I actually left the sales industry, went in as a worship leader, and I was a worship pastor for 10 years at a church. And so music was my passion, leading worship was my passion, and I left sales. Even though I was really good at it, I decided to kind of pursue the music side. And still love music to this day. It's still a passion of mine. Started off on the drums as a kid, and then I went to singing, and kind of singing was my thing. And that was what I decided my career was going to be. And there was a brokerage, an EXP brokerage, a mega team in North Carolina. They were independent at the time, and they saw what I had done at GE. And he tried to hire me to their team for years. And I always said no because my passion was music. And he kept asking, he's like, you'd be a great fit here. I saw what you did at GE, you have this knack for sales. And I always said no, but then he reached out to me, he said, hey, we have changed our whole system. We're no longer independent. We've joined this brokerage called EXP. And I just want to sit down and have a conversation with you about how it's changing what we're doing. And so I was like, yeah, let's talk about it. So we sat down, I think we went to Starbucks and had a coffee. And when he explained the model of EXP, that was the first time in my life that I ever thought, I'm interested in real estate. I was never interested in real estate. I wasn't interested in being a COO of a brokerage, of doing any sales training. It just didn't interest me at all. But when he explained that model, I was like, this is so different from anything I've ever heard from real estate. And that's when I accepted the position. So I left the music world, went on to work for him as his chief operating officer, did sales training and whatnot with the agents, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it way more than I thought that I would, so that's kind of how I got into real estate. It wasn't because I was interested in real estate, it was literally because of the model that was presented to me, and I thought, okay, this is very cool, I like this. So I got licensed, and I was hired on as chief operating officer. Gosh, it's been probably almost 3 years ago at this point, yeah.
And then from there, how did that take you?
Everyone always asks me, they're like, okay,
how
did you get to AI?
how did we get to the next step?
So I tell people, I have friends who are very smart, developers, software engineers, they're the smart people, right? I feel like my value is taking their knowledge and communicating it in a way that any person can understand. And so I'm good with technology. I'm not a developer, I don't code. I'm not a software engineer, but I have friends who are. And I remember being in a conversation with some of those developers, and it was going over my head. And I thought, this is probably how the normal person feels when they're presented with technology. This is probably how my real estate agents on our team feel when we present them all these tools. It's overwhelming. And so in that moment, I thought, if there's a way that I can take this smart information and boil it down to how anyone can understand, and I can communicate it to any person, whether they're 10 or 90, then I think I can make a difference. And so I was at an EXP event. It was actually Brent Gove's Build event where he did in Dallas, where he had Tony Robbins speak.
That was my
And-
first EXP event ever.
Was it really?
I just started 2 weeks ago.
That was my first EXP event as well. And so I'm sitting there, Tony Robbins speaks, and I was going through a very difficult time in my personal life. A lot of things were changing, and it was very hard for me. And I was in this dark place, but I knew that if I got to that event and I listened to Tony speak, that something might change in my situation. And so I'm sitting there, and Tony says, hey, pull out your phone. Pull out my phone. He said, write down 2 things that would change your life, practical things that you could do right now, you just haven't done it, that would change the course of your life. And so I wrote down 2 things. One of them was hire a health coach, because at that point I had completely given up on nutrition, any type of workout routine. I was just in a very low part of my life. And then the second thing was begin to build these AI strategies that I had in my head, I just had never put on paper to help my agents. And those 2 things, and he said, now turn to the person next to you and share them. And I didn't know either person on either side of me. And I don't know why I didn't turn to my right, but I turned to my left. And I shared those 2 things with that person. And his response shocked me. He said, are you actually going to do something about it, or is it going to sit in your notes probably like everything else? And I was like, who is this guy? Well, it ended up being John Tsai, EXP Canada. And I had no idea. I'd never met him before, whatnot. And I said, well, I'm serious about it. What else am I going to say? He said, if you're serious about it, then text this guy right now, sitting here right now. This is a health coach. He will change your life. And so I have a text message from that day, back in August of 2023 or 2022, texting that health coach and saying, hey, I'm ready to go. Didn't know anything about it. It's just like, I need to take action, right? But that second thing I decided to take action on my flight home from Dallas to North Carolina. I remember sitting on that flight thinking, okay, how do I start this? How do I help people? And my whole business has always been focused around providing value to people, right? Figure out what they define as value and then provide that. And so I'm sitting there on the plane and I'm thinking, how can I help my real estate agents use AI in a simple way to either save time or sell homes? Like, those are the only 2 things I care about. I don't care about any of the other bells and whistles. Save time, sell homes. And I remember thinking, okay, I have to solve a problem in order to do that. And there are 2 problems that popped in my head. 1, agents don't know what they can ask tools like ChatGPT because they don't know what's possible. They just know it can do things. And 2, they don't know how to ask it in the right way to get really good results. And so on that flight from Dallas, flying back from Build, listening to Tony, flying back to Charlotte, North Carolina hometown, I took out my laptop and I worked. And that is when I started creating these AI systems. I started writing prompts. I started testing them, figuring out which prompts worked really well, what sequences to use them to get very good results, to where anyone could use it. Like 70-year-old real estate agent, copy, paste, hit enter, and you're good. You can create content really, really well using these tips and these strategies. And that was, a couple of years ago. That was August of 2022. And since then, I still have not turned on a TV once. I don't watch TV. I have committed every moment to learning these strategies to help agents and to help entrepreneurs. And I think that's part of my success, is that I decided I'm going to cut out TV. And from that moment, sitting at Tony Robbins, I cut out TV.
Do you know how much TV the average American watches on a daily basis?
I don't want to know. What is it?
4.5 hours a day.
4.5. So imagine getting 4.5 hours back, to where now I could do whatever I wanted with the 4.5. If I decide to do something else that wasn't beneficial, then there's no benefit there. But I decided, okay, without watching TV, I'm going to apply this time savings to furthering my business and helping others. And I think people, like when I speak, I think people can tell that I actually do want to help. Like, I want to raise the bar of real estate professionals, because there's so many things that are, discount brokerages and all these different things where it's like, man, if we can raise the bar of what we can provide to clients, then we can change the industry, and we'll all help each other if we all get better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the next one is, how much time do you spend on social media, right? Because the average screen time is like 7 hours a day, which again is a combination of phone and text and everything else. But those are the interesting things, especially when people say, I don't have enough time.
Right. Absolutely. You can find time. Yeah. And if I cut out social media, can you imagine what I could do?
And it's social media as a tactic to stay in touch with
For
people
sure.
is great.
For sure.
But it's kind of the mindless scrolling and consumption.
Right.
You know, and it really throws you off kilter as well, right?
Yeah.
Like you could be having a great day and then
All of a sudden.
something throws you off because people are just being keyboard warriors.
Yeah.
So tell me about how you, for someone who's just apprehensive, right? And I see it all the time because people are like, I just don't get it, right? And this is some concept that I've been saying quite a bit, especially around AI, because people are like, how is AI going to change the world?
Yeah.
And I say, you know, again, it's interesting. I've heard it be described as like fire. I'm like, I think that's a bit dramatic. But to me, it's as important as web and then mobile, right? To me, it's like the third big shift I've witnessed in my functional lifetime.
Yeah.
And we can't imagine life without those two things anymore, right? Like completely. The way I'm training myself, because people think I'm very techie, but I wouldn't say I am, is to just implement it on a daily basis. And then it'll slowly evolve. And how, like, if I put something into Google that I normally would have put into Google, now I put it into ChatGPT. And now with the web functionality, you can actually toggle back and forth in the same search bar. For people who don't know where to start, just like complete and total paralysis, where do they start?
Yeah, I would say start with a tool like ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, it's large language model, right? And you might have heard of the term LLM. There are several of them out there. You know, you have Gemini, you have Claude. Everyone always asks me, probably the number one question I get asked is, what's the best large language model to use? And it's kind of like, what's the best CRM to use as a real estate agent? Well, it's the one that you're going to actually use.
That's my answer always.
So whatever you're comfortable with. And for me, I would say 70% of the time I use ChatGPT, just because that's what I started with and I'm comfortable with it. But I would definitely start there because there's a free account. You don't even have to pay for an account with ChatGPT. Now, there are some incredible features with the paid version that I always recommend people
Well, if you're
upgrade.
saving the $17.99 from Netflix, you can just
There
spend,
you go.
you can spend the $20 with
There
Chat
you go.
for 4.0.
Exactly, easy. But even if you start, you get a free account, get your feet wet, try it. And I always tell people, like, think about AI first when you're thinking about creating something or really doing
So
anything.
you want a fun one I used
Yeah,
over the
let's hear it.
weekend with Ariana? We were with the whole family for lunch, and there was a wine list.
Yeah.
And Ariana's like, pick one. And I actually took a photo, and I opened ChatGPT with the paid version. You can upload images, and I said, we like big-bodied cabs. What is the best wine on here for quality to value based on this list? And it picked. It picked for us.
So that health coach I was telling you about, the guy who I texted at that Tony Robbins event, he is extremely strict with diet. His whole thing is reduce inflammation. Like he says, all Americans have inflammation just because of what's in our food. And so he's very, very strict. And when I go out to eat, I would have to take pictures of the menu, send it to him. He circles and says, ask the waitress this, like very, very detailed. Have this on the side, make sure they don't cook with this. And so I trained ChatGPT. I created a GPT. With the paid version, you can do that. And I just loaded all of my coach's preferences on what I can and can't eat. And then every time I'm at a restaurant, because I travel all the time, I take a picture of the menu and I say, what can I have? And it will only list the things that I can eat with my dietary restrictions. And so I love that you use that too, because you can literally train it. You could take a picture of your fridge open and say, based on the ingredients that I have, what can I cook for dinner? And it will give you what you can cook for dinner and the recipe. So it's pretty incredible with not only text, but if you have the paid version, you now have the ability for it to do image recognition, you know, which is insane. There was an example of someone who took a picture of a bike, and they said, how do I lower the seat? And it said, all right, there's a lever right here. It looks like this. You need to do this to lower the seat. They took a picture of a lever that wasn't the right lever to test it. And said, no, the lever is over here. This is what you need. Then they took a picture of the instruction manual, and they took a picture of their toolbox with the wrench with all the different sizes. So based on the instruction manual, which size do I use and what tool do I use to do this and to change the wheel? And it analyzed the instruction manual, and it said, based on the instruction manual, you need to use this tool right here from your toolbox. So image recognition is really helpful, but we don't always think about how we can use image recognition. We're much more used to text recognition and text in, text out.
Yeah, a really good application, again, when people say practical application, we just remodeled our whole house, And when we got to the master bathroom, there was a vanity space that we wanted a his and hers, and Ariana wanted to make a counter right in the middle. And it was an odd size. It's not ideal for that. You'd probably need, 180 inches for that. And I had 112. And I kept looking for different images on Google to show the carpenter what I wanted. And I just couldn't figure it out. So I actually wrote a prompt. I said, hey, I'm building a master bath. I want a his and hers. I want a makeup counter in the middle. I want to be able to scoot a seat underneath. And I have 112 inches. And it gave me, and I was like, no, I don't like that. And then it ended up 5 different prompts. The vanity in my master bathroom was designed by ChatGPT.
I love that.
And I gave it to the carpenter, and the carpenter created it
Yeah.
with pre-existing pieces, right? So like these are 36 inches, this is 15 inches, and we put it together and there's a couple fillers.
Yeah.
But it was designed by ChatGPT.
That's amazing. I love it. It's a practical use.
And when I
Most
showed the
people-
image, my carpenter, he didn't believe me that. He was like, "Wait, how did you do this?" It's like, I haven't seen this before.
Hold
I was
on,
like,
let me show you.
I showed him the first version to the second version to how I modified my prompt.
See, now, most people stop after the first version because they're like, it's not giving me what I want. And I think that's so important to understand with AI in general. Your first iteration isn't always going to be, and really shouldn't be, the thing that you use. Like, AI will get you 70 to 80% of the heavy lifting done so that you don't have to start with a blank canvas.
Exactly.
No, it's up to you to then edit it. And
I was able to say, hey, I want a Ritz-Carlton feel. Nope, that's too beachy. That's, the interesting part is I tried to do that with the shower and I just couldn't. The glass and the tub, like, it looked more like a sci-fi movie.
Right.
Like it didn't work. But for the vanity, it worked perfect.
That's amazing. I love that. One other thing with AI that a lot of people don't think is using inverted thinking. So instead of saying, hey, write me an email explaining why this person should join eXp Realty, you say, create an argument for me for why this person at this specific brokerage should stay at their brokerage and not join eXp Realty. And it creates the argument for why they shouldn't join eXp. And then you say, now disarm that argument. And it will literally disarm the argument. So you basically have objection handling, which we use with our team a lot. I actually would load in our team's calls. So we used Follow Up Boss for our team or for CRM. And obviously it records the calls. So I would take the file from the call, drag it into ChatGPT, because again, with the paid version, you can upload files. If it's the free version, you can transcribe it, copy the text from the call, paste it in. But I would say, analyze this call and give me feedback on how Cameron could have better acquired this customer. And to say, okay, at 2 minutes and 32 seconds, Cameron said this. Next time he could try using this verbiage. So for sales tactics and training, but then also thinking inverted thinking, turning it around, say, make an argument for why this shouldn't happen, and then say, now disarm that argument, and you're inverting it to get your objection handling. It works extremely well for whatever type of application you want to use.
That's interesting, because one of the things, again, I think the next 5-10 years will be interesting. And I think like forward thinking, empathy, like the very human things are actually going to become of more high value.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just we're early on or people are bad at prompting, but I can tell when it's generated.
100%.
So I like writing myself and then having it used to proof. And sometimes I'll say, edit spelling and grammar only.
Yeah.
Right? Or I'll say, proofread and, I've written articles where I said, hey, this is my thought process. I wrote V1, if you will. And then I'll upload counterpoints like, hey, this is what 2 or 3 other opinions said. What am I missing? I agree with this one and disagree with that one. And it added like 2 or 3 paragraphs that augmented but like, let's say if I started with 1,000 words that were mine, and I only checked grammar and spelling, but then it was able to augment 1 or 2 or 3 missing points from other, because I'll upload, like, I disagree with Article 1, I agree with Article 2 and 3. What am I missing in my op-ed that's not in that one?
Well, there are certain words where you can tell, like delve and unlock. Like, there are certain words that ChatGPT uses all the time. And so I've actually created a list of words that you can just tell that it was written by ChatGPT. Tapestry, right? Like these words. And I have it in the settings So if you go to your settings, there's a customized ChatGPT where you have 1,500 characters on how you'd like it to respond. And it will reference that every single time it creates anything for you. And so in that, I say never use these words. And I've listed them all out to where I don't get tapestry and unlock the power, like those type of words where you're like, oh, that was ChatGPT.
Yeah, I had an agent discover that if you get ChatGPT to write remarks, it always uses the word nestled. So if the remarks say nestled in,
then you know.
then you know ChatGPT wrote it.
So that would be a word that you would put in the custom instructions to say never use the word nestled.
So if there were like top 3 takeaways for novice agents or just anyone watching, right? Like I just shared a couple of how I use it on a regular basis. Like I've gotten into the habit, if I'm going to ask Google, I ask ChatGPT first.
100%.
Which is interesting though, because there have been specific questions that I've asked that ChatGPT didn't know, but Gemini did, because Gemini is much better at searching the web.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to what large language models are. At the very core, it's just a language predictor.
So
people don't know
auto-completion. It's
like literally, it's autocomplete.
It's Clippy.
So it's Clippy. It's a better version of Clippy, and people don't understand that this technology was created from Google researchers in 2018 when they were researching how to figure out how to do this technology to do the autocomplete when you type something in the Google search bar. You know how it autocompletes?
Yeah, that's what it is.
It's literally where the technology started. And so people think that tools like ChatGPT have this knowledge bank of truth. It doesn't have any truth. It literally just says, what should the second word be based on the first word? What should the third word be based on the first 2 words? And so on and so forth. There's actually 175 billion calculations per word that it types out, because it references 3 things when it gives you a response. 1, it references the large amount of data that's been trained on, which is trillions and trillions of data points. 2, it references the prompt that you put in. So garbage in, garbage out. If you ask a more detailed prompt, you're going to get a more detailed result. And then the third thing, and the most important, is it references the prior chat history of what you've been talking about. So it references those 3 variables to give you 1 word. And then it recalculates those 3 variables and says, what should the second word be based on the first word? And then it recalculates those variables to say, what should the third word be? And every single word, there's 175 billion calculations per word that it gives you. And so it's very interesting to understand, because if I can then know that it's going to reference everything I've been talking about before it gives me a response, then I can train it and prime it and prep it with specific information first. Like we talk about our nutrition. Well, if I tell it about my nutrition guidelines and then I order my food, it's going to do it based on that prior chat history. And agents, small business owners, doesn't matter what industry you're in, they go in and they say, write me a blog about this, with no context. So one of the most important things that I always tell people to do is train it on your business, train it on your unique value proposition, train it on your target audience, train it on your marketing, your messaging, your branding, everything. And then create the content after that. And there's a prompt that I give all of my students, which basically says, look, I want you to create content for me in future prompts, but before you do, I want you to fully understand everything about what I'm wanting to accomplish. Ask me, interview me with 25 questions of what you need to know before we create the very best content. And then it asks you 25 of the most important things that it has to know to give you really detailed content. They answer those questions, and then in that chat history, they can then create content, and it's going to reference all of those answers.
But if you start a new chat, it still keeps
Correct.
that.
So one of the issues is there's a context window when it comes to ChatGPT that a lot of people don't necessarily know. The context window is getting larger and larger as the models expand. But in one conversation, it's about 100 to 150 pages of a book in one chat before it starts forgetting information. So what we do for free users will load in those 25 questions and answers, and then I tell them, rename that conversation on the left-hand side and name it whatever your business is. And then whenever you need to create content for that business, go to that chat and say, okay, now write me a blog. Okay, go to that chat, now write me a script for a short form video, right? But you have to understand, after about 100 to 150 pages of a book in that conversation, it's going to start forgetting information about your business. So the free users have to go back and save that document of 25 questions and answers, paste them back in every 150 pages to remind it, hey, here's all the information about my business. The nice thing about the paid version is you can create what are called GPTs, as you know. Free users can use GPTs, but paid users can create them. So you can literally create your own GPT, load in those 25 questions and answers, and it saves it in its knowledge base, and you can pull it in and out of every conversation you're in. So if you're in a random conversation that you started 3 months ago, you pull in the GPT that's been trained on your business, you can pull it in and it never forgets that information. And so there's a context window of 32,000 tokens, which no one cares what a token is, but it's again about 150 pages of a book. And the GPT has that same context window, it just never forgets the information you trained it on.
Yeah, no, I don't know how much you know, but internally we're building a lot to operate EXP as a company. And we're actually building a Leo GPT that has all my podcasts, all my keynotes, as much, because, you know, and to your point, it's interesting if you are somewhat public, right? Because I say, hey, this is Leo Pareja, and it knows who I am.
It knows.
Because of the access to the internet.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think access to the internet is a huge thing, because as a real estate agent, when I started training on ChatGPT, it wasn't connected to the internet, right? You remember when it first came out publicly for everyone to use, and it was very hard.
Right, it was like 2 years old.
It was 2 years old. And so agents are trying to write blogs or create video scripts about current housing interest rates, and it's like, it was 2 years old. And so there were workarounds that we had to do back then, but having it connected to the internet now, I mean, if you are any type of public figure, or if you have any information online, it can pull that information in pretty easily.
Well, Phil, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for coming, and thank you for sharing, because again, the reminder to everybody is like, even if it scares you, just use it a little bit.
Yeah.
And use it for non-important things.
Yeah.
So you can get comfortable with it and try to integrate it into your life.
Very true. Love it. Thank you so much for having me, man.
My pleasure.
Yeah.